My friends dared me to sit on the scariest man in the bar for 10 seconds. I thought it was just a stupid joke. I didn't know he was the Alpha King, and I definitely didn't know that in wolf law. Sitting on an alpha's lap isn't a prank. It's a marriage proposal. Chapter 1. Scrubbing dried champagne out of a velvet rug wasn't exactly how Alina planned to spend her Friday night. Stale alcohol and expensive perfume, the stench of the high-born pack members who had partied here last night, clung to her nose. They left their mess for Omegas like her to clean up. Her knees screamed in protest as she dipped the rag back into the bucket of gray water. Her wolf, a small and scrappy thing inside her chest, let out a tired whine. I know, girl, I know. Being a runt meant doing the jobs no one else wanted. It meant being invisible. By the time the shift ended, Alina threw the rag into the bucket with a wet slap. She grabbed her coat. It was threadbare at the elbows, but it was hers. She needed a drink. Not the fancy stuff she just scrubbed off the floor, but a cheap, burning shot of whiskey to numb the ache in her back. She headed to the Rusty Claw. It was a dive bar on the edge of the territory, the kind of place where the tables were sticky and the lights were low enough to hide the stains on her shirt. Her friends were already there. Alina! Sarah waved. She was a Delta with a laugh loud enough to rattle the glasses. Over here! You missed the first round! Alina slid into the booth, groaning as she hit the seat. If I have to touch another velvet rug, I'm going to bite someone. Her friends laughed. Sudden silence fell over the table as someone slammed an empty green glass bottle down. Oh no. The dare game. Come on, Alina. Mark grinned, his teeth looking too white in the dim light. Don't be a spoilsport. Spin it. She didn't want to. Her stomach twisted. But refusing a game in a pack bar? That was like painting a target on your back. It screamed coward. So, with a heavy sigh, she reached out. Her fingers brushed the cold glass. She gave it a hard spin. Round and round it went. The sound of the glass scraping against the wood seemed to fill the room. Please not me. Please not me. The bottle slowed. It wobbled. In the span of a breath, it stopped. The neck of the bottle was pointing straight at her chest. Well, look at that, Mark sneered, leaning forward. Alina is the lucky winner. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Fine. What's the dare? Drink a pitcher of sludge? Howl at the jukebox? Mark shook his head. His eyes darted across the room. He pointed a thick finger toward the back corner, the VIP booth, the area that was usually empty, but tonight, it was occupied. Alina squinted through the gloom. A man sat there, alone. He was massive. Even sitting down, his shoulders were as wide as the table. He was wrapped in darkness, wearing a black shirt that strained against muscles that looked like they were carved from granite. See him? Mark whispered. That's the Alpha King. Alina's blood ran cold. The king? Here? In a dump like this? No, she breathed. Absolutely not. The dare, Sarah said, her voice shaking a little, is to go over there. Sit on his lap for 10 seconds. Alina stared at them. They had to be joking. Touching the Alpha King wasn't just stupid. It was a death sentence. He was known as the Butcher. He didn't date. He didn't smile. He executed traitors before breakfast. I'll die, Alina said flatly. Then forfeit, Mark challenged. Admit you're just a scared little runt. The word hung in the air. Runt. Something inside her snapped. It was a hot spark of anger. She was tired of cleaning rugs. She was tired of bowing. She was tired of being scared. Without another word, Alina stood up. She smoothed her messy hair. She grabbed her empty shot glass for courage. Fine, she hissed. But if he kills me, I'm haunting every single one of you.
The noise was a physical weight crushing his skull. Alastor swirled the amber liquid in his glass. He didn't drink it. He just watched the light catch the whiskey, trying to focus on that single point of calm. Being the Alpha King meant having senses that were dialed up to 11. Always. He could hear the heartbeat of the bartender. Thump, 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 nervous and fast. He could smell the sweat of the bouncer by the door. He could smell the desperation of the women in the room who kept glancing his way, hoping to catch his eye. Their scents were cloying, like overripe fruit. Too loud, too much. Leave, his wolf growled, pacing aggressively in his mind. Quiet, Alastor commanded internally. We need to be seen. The rumors say I'm dying. I need to show them I'm not. But he felt like he was dying. Not physically, but his soul was rotting. The crown was a shackle. Every day was meetings, executions, and debts he couldn't pay. That was why he had come here, to the lowest bar in the sector. He wanted to remember what the real world smelled like. Turns out, it smelled like cheap beer and regret. He leaned back in the shadowed booth. His eyes scanned the room. A predator looking for nothing. The wind shifted. A new scent hit him. It wasn't sweet like the others. It didn't smell like fear or desperation. It smelled like rain. Cold, fresh rain on dry earth. And wild sage. His eyes snapped to the center of the room. A group of low-level wolves were huddled around a table. Standing up was a woman. She was small. Tiny, actually. Her hair was a frizzy halo of brown curls that looked like they had never seen a comb. Her clothes were baggy and old. She looked like a stiff breeze would blow her over, until she looked at him. Most people looked at him and flinched. They looked at the floor. They looked at his guards. This girl? She looked him dead in the eye, and she looked annoyed. Alastor froze. His glass paused halfway to his mouth. What was she doing? She started walking, not toward the door, toward him. She didn't walk with the sultry sway of the court ladies who tried to seduce him. She marched. Her chin was up. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She looked like she was marching to her own execution and was furious about the inconvenience. Who is she? His wolf stopped pacing. For the first time all night, the beast went still. It was watching her. As the silence roared in his ears, the bar seemed to disappear. The music faded. The chatter stopped. There was only the girl, and the scent of rain getting closer. Closer. His security detail started to move forward, hands going to their weapons. Alastor lifted one finger. Stop. He wanted to see what the little creature would do. She stopped at the edge of his table. She was trembling. He could see the pulse jumping in her throat. A tiny, frantic bird. But her jaw was set like stone. She took a deep breath. She turned around. And then, she sat down. On him.
Her body moved on instinct because if she stopped to think, she would pass out. The walk across the bar felt like miles. Every step was heavy. Her heart was beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. Thump, thump, thump. She reached the booth. Up close, he was even bigger. He smelled like a forest fire, smoke and pine and dangerous power. His eyes were gold, glowing, molten gold. They tracked her every move. Don't look at him. Just do it. 10 seconds. She turned her back to him. Her legs were shaking so bad she thought she might collapse. She lowered herself. She expected to hit the hard wood of the bench, or maybe be shoved onto the floor before she even made contact. Instead, she landed on something hard, but warm. His thighs were like steel beams wrapped in expensive fabric. The heat radiating off him was intense. It soaked instantly through her thin jeans. As the world narrowed, the entire bar went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. 1 second. Alina sat rigid. She held her breath. She stared straight ahead at the wall, refusing to lean back against his chest. She hovered, stiff as a board. 2 seconds. He didn't move. He didn't shove her. He didn't kill her. 3 seconds. But she could feel him. She could feel the slow rise and fall of his chest behind her. She could feel the tension in his legs. Why isn't he throwing me across the room? 4 seconds. The silence was suffocating. She had to say something. Anything to break the tension before her head exploded. She turned her head slightly, just enough to see his profile. His jaw was clenched tight. "I'm only here because of a stupid dare," she whispered. her voice trembling more than she wanted. Don't get ideas. 5 seconds. A low sound rumbled in his chest. It vibrated right through her spine. It wasn't a growl. It was a laugh, or maybe a scoff. His voice was deep, like gravel grinding together. Relax, he drawled. You're heavier in your head than you are in reality. 6 seconds. Indignation shot through her. Did he just call her fat, or crazy, or both? Excuse me? She squeaked. 7 seconds. You're shaking, he noted. His voice was calm, too calm, like a leaf. I am not, she lied. 8 seconds. She was going to survive. She was actually going to survive. 9 seconds. Okay, that's it, she muttered. Time's up. 10 seconds. Alina tried to hop off. She planted her feet to launch herself away from the scary, hot forest fire man. Before she could move, his hand blurred. Large, warm fingers clamped around her waist. They were gentle, but immovable, like iron bands. She froze. Where do you think you're going? He murmured. His breath ghosted against her ear, sending a shiver straight down to her toes. I'm done, she stammered. The dare is over. The dare might be over, Alastor said, and his voice dropped an octave, turning into something dark and possessive. But you just sat on the king. She felt a strange sensation in her gut, a pull, like a hook snagged in her soul. Her wolf woke up inside her. It didn't whimper this time. It howled. Mate, no. No, no, no. She tried to pry his fingers off her waist. Let go, please. You touched me, he whispered, and the gold in his eyes flared brighter. You claimed me. I didn't claim anyone, she panic whispered. I sat on your lap. It was a joke. To you, he said, not to him. He nodded toward the door. The bouncers were locking it. And certainly not to me. The air thickened. It became heavy, charged with electricity. Alina looked at her friends. They were pale. Sarah had her hands over her mouth. Mark looked like he was about to be sick. What are you going to do? Alina asked, her voice barely a squeak. Alastor tightened his grip, pulling her back until her back hit his solid chest. She was trapped. I'm going to take you home, he said simply. And we are going to have a very long talk about boundaries. Before she could scream, he stood up, lifting her with him as if she weighed nothing at all.
The silence in the bar shattered the moment he lifted her. Alastor moved with the fluid grace of a predator who had caught his prize. The girl, Alina, was surprisingly light, yet she writhed in his arms like a bag of angry feral cats. Her fists hammered against his chest. It didn't hurt. To him, her strikes felt like raindrops against a mountain, but the defiance was intoxicating. Put me down, she screeched, her voice cracking. You giant oaf, put me down right now. He didn't stop. He couldn't. His wolf was currently roaring in the back of his mind, chanting a single maddening word. Mine, mine, mine. He kicked the bar doors open. The cool night air hit them, carrying the scent of exhaust and damp pavement. His black SUV idled at the curb, the engine purring like a waiting beast. His driver, a stoic beta named Silas, opened the back door, eyes widening slightly at the sight of the king manhandling a frantic woman in a thrift store coat. Kidnapping, Alina yelled at the driver. Call the police. He's kidnapping me. Silas looked at Alastor. Alastor just glared. Don't even think about it. He tossed her onto the plush leather back seat. Before she could move, he slid in next to her and slammed the door. The lock clicked with a sound of finality. Drive, Alastor commanded. The car surged forward. You can't do this, Alina gasped, scrambling to the far side of the seat. She pressed her back against the door, eyes wide and terrified. This is illegal. I have rights. I have a job. I have a cat to feed. You have, Alastor said, his voice low and rough, a very loud mouth. He reached out, intending to calm her. He just wanted to touch her arm, to let the skin-to-skin contact settle the roaring in his blood, because the bond was pulling at him, demanding connection. Before he could bridge the distance, she lunged. Pain, sharp and sudden, flared in his hand. He froze. She had bitten him. She had actually bitten the Alpha King. Alastor looked down. Her teeth were sunk into the fleshy part of his palm. She wasn't letting go. Her eyes were squeezed shut and she was growling. A tiny, pathetic, adorable sound. With a mix of shock and amusement, his other hand came up to grip her jaw. He applied just enough pressure to make her release him. She pulled back, spitting. "You taste like expensive soap and tyranny." He stared at the crescent-shaped marks on his skin. They were already healing, fading from angry red to pink. "Did you just bite me?" he asked, genuinely baffled. No one had touched him in anger in 10 years, not without dying immediately after. "I'll do it again," she threatened, though her voice wavered. "Where are we going?" "To the Citadel," he answered. "Why?" "Because," he said, leaning in until he could smell the fear spiking in her scent. "You sat on my lap, Alina. In our laws, that is a binding contract. You initiated a claiming right." Her face went pale. I didn't know." "Ignorance," Alastor murmured, "is not an exemption." He watched her crumble. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a cold, stark realization. She turned to look out the window as the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red. In the quiet that followed, Alastor felt a pang of something strange in his chest. Guilt? No, kings didn't feel guilt. Kings felt duty. Yet, as he watched her reflection in the glass, saw the single tear tracking down her cheek, his wolf stopped roaring. Instead, it whined. He wanted to wipe the tear away. He wanted to wrap her in his coat. What's worse, he realized he would tear the world apart to keep her there.
The Citadel wasn't a house. It was a fortress of black stone that looked like it had been carved out of a nightmare. Alina had been dragged, literally dragged, through massive oak doors, past lines of bowing servants who looked at her like she was a stray dog that had wandered onto the carpet. Now she was in a room that was bigger than her entire apartment. "Please, miss," the maid said, holding up a dress that looked like it cost more than Alina's life. It was silver silk, slippery and cold. "The king requests you dress for dinner." "The king," Alina snapped, "can eat dirt." She backed away until her legs hit the edge of the massive four-poster bed. The room smelled like lavender and lemon polish. It was too clean. It made her skin itch. "I'm not wearing that," Alina said. "It looks like a fishing net for rich people." The maid looked terrified, but he insisted. "I don't care." Alina's heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She needed to hide. She needed to feel safe, and nothing in this room felt safe. As the maid scurried out to get assistance, Alina bolted. She found a door on the far wall. She yanked it open, hoping for a hallway, an exit, a magical portal back to her crappy apartment. Instead, she found a closet. It was a walk-in closet the size of a garage, and it was filled with his clothes. Rows of black suits, rows of crisp white shirts. But in the back, tucked away like a dirty secret, were flannels. Big, soft, worn-out flannel shirts. Red, blue, green. They looked used. They looked real. Driven by instinct, Alina grabbed a red one. She buried her face in it. It smelled like him. Not the expensive soap smell, but the underlying scent. Pine needles, wood smoke, and something muskier. Man, wolf. Why did that smell make her knees weak? It should have made her sick. He was her captor. He was the monster everyone whispered about. "He's safe," her wolf whispered. "Shut up," she told it. She stripped off her sticky, beer-stained t-shirt. She pulled the giant flannel on. It swallowed her whole. The sleeves hung past her hands. The hem hit her knees. She buttoned it up to her chin. It felt like a hug. A heavy, warm, protective hug. She curled up in the corner of the closet, surrounded by his shoes. It was dark here. Quiet. From there, she could plan her escape. Step 1. Survive the night. Step 2. Don't let the Scary King see her cry. Step 3. Find food, because kidnapping apparently made her starving. Suddenly, a stomach growl ripped through the silence. Alina glared at her stomach. Traitor. She stood up. She wasn't going to wait for dinner. She was going to find the kitchen, and if anyone tried to stop her, well, she still had her teeth. She opened the closet door, peeked into the hallway, and crept out. The stone floor was cold under her bare feet. She followed her nose. Coffee, strong, dark coffee. She turned a corner, pushed open a heavy door, and froze. She wasn't in the kitchen.
The war room was thick with the scent of fear. Alastor stood at the head of the obsidian table. His hands were pressed flat against the cool stone surface. Around him, 12 generals sat in various states of terror. "You lost," Alastor said, his voice quiet and deadly. 3 supply trucks, in 1 week. General Kale, a burly wolf with a scar across his eye, trembled. "Your Majesty, the rebels, they knew our route. We suspect a spy." "A spy," Alastor repeated. "Or incompetence." The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Shadows seemed to stretch from the corners wrapping around Alastor's form. This was the part he hated. The part where he had to be the butcher. "Give me one reason," Alastor growled, his claws lengthening, scratching against the stone, "why I shouldn't strip you of your rank and your head right now." General Kale opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The silence stretched, tight as a bowstring. Alastor prepared to give the order. He could feel the violence rising in his blood, the need to purge the weakness from his pack. The heavy oak doors groaned open, cutting through the tension. Every head in the room snapped toward the sound. Alastor turned, ready to flay whoever dared to interrupt a council execution. There, standing in the doorway, was a pile of laundry? No, it was Alina. She was drowning in his favorite red flannel shirt. Her hair was a bird's nest. Her feet were bare, and in her hands she held a steaming mug she must have pilfered from the antechamber. She blinked. She looked at the terrified generals. She looked at Alastor, whose claws were fully extended. Any sane person would have run. Instead, she walked into the room. The sound of her bare feet slapping against the polished stone echoed in the deathly silence. Slap, slap, slap. She walked right up to him. She didn't bow. She didn't cower. She shoved the mug into his hand. "Drink this," she said. Her voice was steady, though he could hear her heart racing like a hummingbird's wings. "You get grumpy when your blood sugar is low." The room stopped breathing. General Kyle looked like he was hallucinating. Alastor stared at the mug. Then he stared at her. "I am in the middle of an execution," he stated, though the rage was rapidly leaking out of him, replaced by sheer bewilderment. "Yeah, well, you look like you're about to pop a vein," she retorted. She crossed her arms. The sleeves flopped around like empty tubes. "And honestly, it's bringing down the vibe. Drink the coffee, Grumpy." Grumpy. She called the High King of the Werewolf Nation Grumpy in front of his war council. Alastor looked at the general. The man was staring at Alina with awe. A laugh bubbled up in Alastor's chest. He tried to squash it, but it escaped. A short, dark huff of amusement. He lifted the mug. He took a sip. It was terrible. Too much sugar. "Better?" she asked, tilting her head. "Marginally," he grunted. He looked back at General Kale. The desire to kill him had vanished. It was impossible to maintain a murderous rage when a tiny woman in his shirt was criticizing his mood. "Get out," Alastor told the general. "Fix the supply lines, or next time, I let her talk to you." The generals scrambled out of the room like rats fleeing a sinking ship, leaving Alastor alone with the girl. "You," Alastor said, looking down at her, "are a chaotic nuance." "And you," she yawned, rubbing her eyes, "need better coffee. Now, where do you keep the sandwiches? I'm starving." As he watched her wander toward his private stash of food, Alastor realized 2 things. 1. She had absolutely no survival instincts. 2. He was in deep, deep trouble.
The next morning, the Citadel felt less like a home and more like a museum where she was the exhibit. Alina tightened the belt of the stolen flannel shirt. It was the only armor she had. She walked down the long, cold corridor. Her bare feet made no sound on the stone. She was trying to find the library. Why? Because books didn't judge you. Books didn't care that you were a broke Omega who accidentally kidnapped herself. By the time she reached the main atrium, the sun was streaming through the glass ceilings, lighting up the dust motes. But the room wasn't empty. A group of women stood near the fountain. They were highborn. You could tell by the way they stood. Backs straight, chins up, smelling like money and disdain. They were laughing soft, tinkling laughs, until they saw her. The laughter died instantly. One of them, a blonde with pearls woven into her braid, stepped forward. She looked Alina up and down, her lip curled. "So," the blonde sneered, her voice echoing in the large space. "This is the pet the king brought home." Alina froze. Her instinct was to shrink, to apologize, to run back to the closet. That was what an Omega did. Memory flashed in her mind, Alastor's golden eyes burning into hers. You just sat on the king. If she acted weak now, they would eat her alive. Instead of bowing, Alina yawned. She stretched her arms over her head, making sure the massive red flannel shirt rode up just a little. "Pet?" Alina asked, scratching her nose. "I prefer the term royal headache, but you can call me Alina." The blonde's eyes widened. "Do you know who I am? My father is Duke Sterling. You are nothing but a street rat in a king's shirt." That stung. It stung because it was true. Even so, Alina forced a smile. It was sharp, dangerous. "This shirt?" She plucked at the fabric. "Yeah, it smells like him. It's cozy. You should ask him for one." "Oh, wait, he's never invited you into his closet, has he?" The group gasped. The blonde turned a furious shade of red. The tension in the room spiked, thick enough to choke on. "You will regret this," the blonde hissed. "He will get bored, and when he throws you out, we will be waiting." Alina's heart hammered against her ribs. Thump. Thump. She was terrified, but she didn't show it. "Maybe," Alina shrugged, turning her back on them. "But until then, I think I'll go read a book. Try not to claw each other's eyes out while I'm gone." She walked away. She kept her spine straight. She waited for the hex or the shove. It never came. Once she slipped through the heavy oak doors of the library, the smell hit her instantly. It should have smelled like old paper and leather, and it did. But underneath that, there was something else. Something sour, like rotting meat hidden under a bed of roses. Alina frowned. She sniffed the air again. It wasn't a physical smell. It was magic. It was the smell of a kingdom that was dying from the inside out. "Great," she whispered to the empty room. "The castle is haunted, the girls are mean, and I'm wearing a tent. What else could go wrong?"
Sleep was a stranger Alastor hadn't visited in years. That night, the silence of the Citadel was oppressive. Usually, he would be in his office, drowning in paperwork, trying to figure out how to pay the debts his mother left behind. But tonight he couldn't focus. His wolf was restless. It kept pacing in his mind, nudging him toward the east wing, toward her. Eventually, he gave up. He walked down the dark hallway. The stone was cool under his feet. He told himself he was just getting water, just checking the perimeter. Before he realized it, he was pushing open the kitchen door. The massive industrial fridge was open. The light spilled out, casting a long shadow on the floor. And there she was. Alina sat on the counter. Her legs swung back and forth. She was holding a massive sandwich, ham, cheese, pickles, and something that looked suspiciously like strawberry jam. She looked up. Her mouth was full. She froze like a raccoon caught in a trash can. "I didn't steal it," she said, swallowing hard. "I borrowed it." for nutritional purposes. Alastor stared at her. In the soft light of the fridge, with crumbs on her chin, she looked real. More real than the throne. More real than the crown. Driven by a force he couldn't name, he walked over. He stood between her knees. He shouldn't have done it. It was too intimate. But the pull was magnetic. "Is that jam?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. "Don't knock it till you try it," she whispered. She held the sandwich out. A peace offering. He hesitated. Kings didn't eat leftovers. Kings didn't eat jam with ham. Yet he leaned down. He took a bite. It was salty, sweet, messy. It tasted like comfort. "Well?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Verdict?" "It's disgusting," Alastor lied. He took another bite. "Give me the rest." "Hey," she protested, but she was smiling. For a moment, the weight of the world lifted. There was no debt, no war council, no Serafina, just a girl and a sandwich in the middle of the night. "You're not as scary as they say," Alina murmured, watching him chew. "I mean, you're big, and you growl a lot, but you share your snacks." Alastor stopped chewing. He looked at her, really looked at her. "I am a monster, Alina," he said quietly. "Do not forget that. My hands are stained with blood." "So wash them," she said simply, as if it were that easy. She reached out. Her small hand touched his cheek. Her thumb brushed over the stubble on his jaw. The touch burned. It was electric. His breath hitched. "You're not a monster," she whispered. "You're just lonely." The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. He closed his eyes. He leaned into her palm, just for a second. Lost in the moment, he almost didn't hear the footsteps. Almost. His eyes snapped open. The gold flared. The door to the kitchen swung open. A messenger stood there. He was pale, shaking. He held a letter with a black wax seal. "Your Majesty," the messenger squeaked. I am so sorry to disturb you." Alastor stepped back, shielding Alina with his body. "Speak." "She's here," the messenger whispered. "The Queen Mother, and Lady Serafina." The temperature in the room dropped. The sandwich felt like ash in his mouth. "When?" Alastor demanded. "Now," the messenger said. "They are at the gate." Alastor looked back at Alina. She looked confused, scared. "Go to your room," he commanded. His voice was hard again. The king was back. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone." "Alastor?" she asked, reaching for him. "Go," he roared. She flinched. The hurt in her eyes cut him deeper than any blade. But he had to scare her. He had to make her run, because the real monsters had just arrived.
The peace was shattered before it even began. Alina ran back to her room, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Thump, 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 thump. Alastor had roared at her, the look in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was panic. What scared the Alpha King? She didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, the citadel was buzzing. Servants were running everywhere, polishing things that were already shiny. The air smelled of fresh lilies. Too many of them. It was choking. Alina stood at the top of the grand staircase. She knew she should hide. Alastor had told her to lock the door. But curiosity was her fatal flaw. Below, the massive doors groaned open. 2 women walked in. The first was older. Her hair was silver, piled high on her head. She walked with a cane, but she didn't need it. She used it like a weapon. That was Queen Mother Rowena. But the second woman? Alina's breath caught in her throat. She was perfection. Tall, blonde hair that fell like a waterfall of gold, a body that was made for sin and combat. She wore a white suit that cost more than Alina's entire existence. This was Serafina. Alastor stood at the bottom of the stairs. He looked stiff, statue still. "Mother," Alastor greeted. His voice was ice. "Serafina." "Alastor," Serafina purred. She stepped forward. She didn't bow. She kissed his cheek. You look tired, darling. Has the crown been heavy? What do you want? Alastor asked. We came to help, Rowena said, her eyes scanning the room. We heard rumors. Rumors that you had picked up a stray. Alina tried to step back into the shadows, but Serafina looked up. Her eyes weren't gold, they were blue, icy, pale blue, and they locked onto Alina instantly. Ah, Serafina smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a shark baring its teeth. There she is, the little mouse. Serafina didn't yell. She didn't scream. She used the voice. Come down here, Serafina commanded. The words weren't just sound. They were power. They slammed into Alina's chest like a physical weight. Her knees buckled. Her wolf whined, desperate to obey the alpha command. Submit! Submit! Alina gripped the banister. Her knuckles turned white. No. She forced her legs to lock. She forced her head to stay up. I'm good up here. Thanks, Alina called down. Her voice shook, but she got the words out. Silence. The servants gasped. You didn't say no to the voice. Serafina's smile vanished. Her eyes narrowed. Defiant, Serafina noted, and untrained. Leave her be, Alastor growled. He stepped between them, breaking the line of sight. She is my guest. Guest? Serafina laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. Oh, Alastor. We both know why I'm here. The debts? The treasury? She pulled a folder from her pristine bag. She waved it in the air. My father bought your debt, darling. You own the kingdom. But I own you. Alina felt cold. Cold all the way to her bones. Serafina looked up at Alina one last time. Enjoy the sheets while they're warm, runt, Serafina whispered, but the acoustics carried it perfectly. Because by Friday, that bed is mine. Alina watched them walk away. She looked at Alastor's back. He didn't turn around. He didn't look at her. And in that moment, Alina realized the truth. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was a war. And she had just brought a flannel shirt to a knife fight.
The library was usually a sanctuary of silence, but today it smelled like ink, old parchment, and betrayal. Alastor sat behind his mahogany desk. His hands were clenched so tight the wood groaned in protest. Across from him sat his mother, Queen Mother Rowena, and Lady Serafina. Between them lay a single leather-bound ledger. It was open. The numbers were written in red ink. It's simple math, darling, Rowena said, tapping her cane against the floor. Click, click, click. The sound was like a nail being driven into Alastor's skull. The treasury is empty. The grain shipments, unpaid. The border guards, unpaid. The kingdom runs on credit, Alastor. And the bank, she gestured to the blonde woman beside her, is sitting right there. Serafina smiled. It was a predatory curve of lips painted blood red. My father is a patient man, Alastor, but he wants a return on his investment. A union between our houses wipes the slate clean. Alastor stared at the ledger. The numbers blurred. You gambled it, Alastor accused, his voice a low growl that vibrated in his chest. You gambled away the soldiers' wages. I made investments, Rowena corrected, sniffing disdainfully. They simply haven't matured yet. So you sell me, Alastor said, to fix your mess. I am saving you, Serafina interjected. She leaned forward, placing a manicured hand over his. Her skin was cold. It felt like touching a snake. That little stray upstairs? She can't help you. She can't buy grain. She can't command armies. She is a liability. She is my breath, Alastor thought, but he didn't say it. With those words, the trap snapped shut. If he refused Serafina, the debt would be called in. The pack would starve. His people would freeze. A king who chose his own heart over his people's survival was no king at all. Fine, Alastor whispered. The word tasted like ash. Excellent, Serafina beamed. Then get rid of the runt. Tonight. Alastor stood up. He walked out of the library, feeling like a ghost in his own body. He found Alina in her room. She was wearing his flannel shirt, looking out the window. She turned when he entered, her face lighting up with a smile that broke him in half. "Hey," she said softly. "Is the wicked witch gone?" Alastor forced his face into a mask of stone. He killed the part of him that wanted to hold her. "Pack your things," he said coldly. Alina's smile faltered. "What?" "You were a distraction," Alastor lied. He looked at the wall, unable to meet her eyes. "An amusing diversion, but the real queen is here now. I have no use for a runt." The silence that followed was deafening. He heard her heart skip a beat, then shatter. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I am the Alpha King," Alastor said, his voice void of emotion. "I do what is best for the pack. You are not best for the pack. Silas is waiting downstairs. Go." He turned and walked away before she could see the single tear that betrayed him. He walked away, and with every step he felt his soul tearing in two.
The suitcase lay open on the bed like a gaping mouth, ready to swallow the few pathetic belongings she had. Alina threw her toothbrush inside. She threw in her jeans. She grabbed the red flannel shirt to take it off, but her fingers froze on the buttons. "You were a distraction." The words echoed in her head, bouncing around like a ricocheting bullet. She should be crying. She was crying. 5 minutes ago. In a heartbeat, the sadness shifted. It boiled. It thickened into something hot and heavy in her chest. He had looked at the wall. Alastor, the man who stared down assassins, couldn't look her in the eye when he dumped her. "He's lying," Alina whispered to the empty room. She sniffed, wiping her nose on the sleeve of his shirt. A king didn't kidnap a woman, feed her sandwiches at 2 a.m., and look at her like she was the sun, only to kick her out because his ex showed up. What's worse, he was doing it to save her. He was being a martyr. A giant, brooding, idiotic martyr. "Oh, hell no," Alina growled. She slammed the suitcase shut. She didn't pick it up. Instead, she marched out of the room. She stomped down the grand staircase. She followed the sound of polite conversation and the clinking of silverware. She reached the dining hall. The doors were closed. Guards stood on either side. "Let me in," Alina demanded. "The king gave orders." One guard started. "The king is an idiot," Alina snapped. She ducked under the guard's arm and shoved the doors open with both hands. Bang! The heavy wood slammed against the stone walls. 3 heads turned. Alastor sat at the head of the table. He looked miserable. Queen Rowena looked annoyed. And Serafina looked victorious, holding a glass of wine like a trophy. "I thought I told you to leave," Alastor said, though his eyes widened in surprise. "Yeah, about that," Alina said. She walked over to the sideboard where the food was laid out. She grabbed a silver bowl filled with steamed broccoli. She marched up to the table. She slammed the bowl down in front of Alastor. "You don't get to fire me," Alina announced, crossing her arms. "I quit, but I'm not leaving until you admit you're an idiot." Serafina stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. "How dare you! Guards, remove this filth!" "Sit down, Barbie," Alina shot back, not even looking at her. She kept her eyes locked on Alastor. "You think you can protect me by pushing me away? You think sacrificing yourself makes you a hero? It just makes you a coward." Alastor stared at the broccoli. Then he looked up at her. The mask was cracking. The gold in his eyes swirled. "Alina," he warned, his voice straining. "You don't know what's at stake." "I know you're miserable," she countered. "And I know she smells like fake tan and evil." She pointed a thumb at Serafina. "So, here's the deal. I'm staying, and you're going to eat your vegetables, because if you marry her, you'll be dead of boredom in a week." Alastor's mouth twitched. He tried to hold it back, but he couldn't. A smirk broke through. "Vegetables," he repeated dryly. "Eat up, Grumpy," she challenged. For a moment, the tension held. Then, Alastor picked up a fork. He stabbed a piece of broccoli. He ate it. It was a silent declaration of war against his mother. Serafina let out a shriek of rage. "This is unacceptable. She is an Omega. She has no standing." Alina smiled. It was a terrifying, feral little smile. "I have the king's ear," Alina said, "and apparently his appetite. Beat that."
The broccoli tasted like victory. Alastor chewed slowly, watching Serafina unravel. The perfect Luna facade was slipping, revealing the spoiled brat underneath. Alina stood beside him, vibrating with adrenaline, her hair a wild halo of defiance. She had refused to leave. She had called him a coward. And God help him, he loved her for it. But the moment was fragile. "You think this is a game?" Serafina hissed. Her blue eyes glowed with supernatural power. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with ozone and magic. "You think you can just waltz in here wearing his clothes and claim a throne you haven't earned?" "I didn't claim a throne," Alina said, her voice shaking slightly but holding firm. "I claimed a chair, and a vegetable." "Enough!" Rowena slammed her hand on the table. "This charade ends now. Alastor, honor the agreement, or the debt is called in tomorrow." Alastor tensed. The reality crashed back in. The broccoli didn't pay the bills. "He won't marry you," Alina said, stepping closer to Alastor, her shoulder brushing his arm. The contact sent a spark of warmth through his cold veins. "He doesn't love you." "Love?" Serafina laughed. It was a cruel, hollow sound. "Love is for peasants. Wolves rule by strength, by blood, by law." She turned her gaze to Alastor, her eyes narrowing. "If she thinks she is worthy of you," Serafina said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "then let her prove it. I invoke the old laws." Alastor stopped breathing. "No." "Serafina," Alastor warned, rising from his seat. "Don't." "I invoke the trial of the rose," Serafina declared, her voice booming through the hall. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and ancient. The trial of the rose was a relic of a barbaric past, a series of deadly tests designed to weed out weak mates. It hadn't been used in a century because usually the challenger died. "I refuse," Alastor roared. "I will not allow it." "You cannot refuse," Rowena said quietly, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "It is her right as a high-born challenger. Unless the girl declines. If she declines, she admits she is unworthy. She is banished. And you marry Serafina." Alastor turned to Alina. He grabbed her shoulders. "Refuse," he commanded. "Alina, say no. It's a death sentence. It involves combat, poison, magic. You are human. Mostly. You cannot win." Alina looked up at him. Her eyes searched his. She saw the fear there, the sheer terror of losing her. "If I say no," she asked quietly, "you have to marry her?" "I will figure something else out," Alastor pleaded. "Just don't do this." "But if I win?" Alina asked, looking past him to Serafina. "The debt? The marriage?" "If you win?" Serafina scoffed, examining her fingernails. "I leave. The debt is forgiven. It is the price of the challenge. But you won't win. You'll bleed out in the dirt." Alina looked back at Alastor. She reached up and touched his face. "You're not the only one who can be brave, Grumpy," she whispered. Before he could cover her mouth, before he could drag her out of the room, she turned to the council of elders who had just begun to trickle in, drawn by the commotion. "I accept," Alina said clearly. The room erupted in gasps. Serafina smiled, a smile that promised pain. Alastor felt his heart stop. She had just signed her own death warrant. As the weight of her decision settled, Alastor pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "You assume I'll let you fight fair?" He whispered into her ear, a dark promise forming in his mind. "If she wants a trial, she'll get one. but I'm going to teach you how to cheat.
The training room smelled like old sweat, iron, and impending doom. Alina lay flat on her back, staring at the high stone ceiling. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like jelly. Standing over her was Alastor. He didn't look tired. He looked like a god of war who had barely broken a sweat. "Get up," he ordered. His voice was hard, but his eyes were terrified. "I can't," Alina wheezed. "I'm dying. Leave me here. Tell my mother I love her cat." "Serafina will not stop because you are tired," Alastor growled. He reached down, grabbed her hand, and hauled her to her feet as if she weighed less than a feather. "She is bigger than you. She is faster than you. If you try to fight her like a wolf, you will die." "Great pep talk," Alina muttered, swaying on her feet. "Really inspiring." "I am not trying to inspire you," Alastor said, stepping into her personal space. The heat radiating off him was distracting. "I am trying to keep you alive." What followed was a lesson in dirty fighting. Alastor didn't teach her how to punch. He taught her where the soft spots were: the throat, the eyes, the knees. "You are small," he said, moving behind her, guiding her arms. His chest pressed against her back. "Use gravity. Use dust. Use anything." "So, cheat?" Alina asked, leaning back into him because she couldn't help it. "Survivors don't call it cheating," he whispered against her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "They call it winning." In that moment, the air shifted. The training stopped. He spun her around. His hands gripped her waist. The desperation in his touch was palpable. He looked at her like he wanted to devour her and hide her away at the same time. "Why did you do it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why did you accept?" "Because," Alina said, reaching up to touch the scowl between his brows. "You were going to give up your life for a spreadsheet. I couldn't let you do that." "You are a fool," he murmured. "I'm your fool," she corrected. Driven by impulse, he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It tasted like fear and longing. His mouth was hot, demanding, claiming every inch of her. For a second, Alina forgot about the trial. She forgot about Serafina. There was only him. The heavy oak door creaked open, shattering the moment. They broke apart, chests heaving. Alina looked past Alastor's shoulder. Through the crack in the door, down the hallway, she saw Serafina. The blonde woman wasn't training. She was drinking something from a small, glowing purple vial. She wiped her mouth, tossed the vial into a potted plant, and stalked away. Alina frowned. Strange. "Ready for round 2? Alastor asked, bringing her back to reality. "No," Alina said, raising her fists. "But let's do it anyway."
The grand ballroom was a shark tank wrapped in silk. Alastor stood by the throne watching the court fill up. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and bloodlust. This was the first trial, the test of etiquette. It sounded boring, but in the wolf court, a social misstep could destroy a reputation faster than a blade. Serafina stood in the center of the room. She was flawless. She recited the lineage of the elder packs in fluent Latin. She danced the waltz with a grace that made her look like she was floating. The elders nodded. Perfect. Cold. Next, it was Alina's turn. Alastor held his breath. Alina walked out. She wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing a simple black dress she must have borrowed from a maid. It was too big in the shoulders. She tripped on the hem immediately. The court gasped. "Oops," Alina muttered, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "Floor is slippery. Who waxed this?" She approached the table set for the dining test. There were 12 forks. Alina looked at the forks. She looked at the judges. "Okay," she said, picking up the smallest fork. "I'm going to be honest. I usually eat pizza with my hands, but I'm pretty sure this one is for shrimp." It was for escargot. Serafina smirked from the sidelines. Pathetic. Before the judge could fail her, something happened. A young pup, the daughter of a visiting alpha, dropped her toy ball. It rolled across the floor and stopped at Alina's feet. The pup froze, terrified to interrupt the trial. The mother looked ready to faint from fear. Without a second thought, Alina bent down. She picked up the ball. "Hey," Alina whispered to the pup, crouching down to her level, ignoring the shocked gasps of the elders. "You dropped this. Want to see a trick?" Alina balanced the ball on her nose. She crossed her eyes. The pup giggled, a pure, happy sound that cut through the stuffy tension of the room. Alina smiled, a real, warm smile. She handed the ball back. "Run along, little wolf." She stood up and faced the judges. "I don't know which fork is for the snails," she admitted, "but I know that terrified kids shouldn't be afraid of their queen. So, fail me if you want." The room was silent. Then, the pup's mother started clapping. Slowly. Then another wolf joined in. Then another. They weren't clapping for her etiquette. They were clapping for her heart. Alastor let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His chest ached with pride. Serafina had won the points, but Alina had won the room. As a result, Serafina's perfect mask cracked. She looked at Alina with pure, unadulterated hatred. "Enjoy the applause, runt," Serafina mouthed. "Tomorrow we bleed."
The arena was nothing like the ballroom. It was a pit of dirt and dried blood surrounded by cheering wolves who wanted violence. Alina stood on one side. She wore leather armor that Alastor had found for her. It felt heavy. On the other side stood Serafina. She didn't need armor. She began to shift. The sound of bones cracking filled the air. Snap, crunch. Fur burst from Serafina's skin. Within seconds, the blonde woman was gone. In her place stood a massive white wolf. She was huge, easily 3 times the size of a normal wolf. Her teeth were the size of steak knives. Alina swallowed hard. "Okay, no big deal. Just a giant murder dog." She closed her eyes. She reached for her own wolf. "Come on, girl. We need to be small." She shifted. It hurt, but it was a familiar pain. The world grew larger. Smells became sharper. When she opened her eyes, she was on 4 paws. She was brown, scruffy, and tiny. She looked like a coyote compared to Serafina. The crowd laughed. Serafina roared. It shook the ground. "Begin!" the elder shouted. Serafina lunged. She was a white blur of death. "Move!" Alina's instincts screamed. Driven by pure instinct, Alina didn't try to block. She dropped. She flattened herself against the dirt. Serafina sailed over her, jaws snapping on empty air. Alina scrambled up. She ran. She wasn't running away. She was running under. Serafina turned, confused. Where did the runt go? Alina was underneath her. She nipped hard at Serafina's sensitive back paw. Serafina yelped and spun around, furious. She swiped a massive claw. It connected. Pain exploded in Alina's shoulder. She went flying, tumbling through the dust until she hit the stone wall. Crack! Her vision blurred. The crowd roared for blood. Serafina prowled closer, drool dripping from her jaws. She was playing with her food. "Get up," Alina told herself. "Get up or die." She remembered Alastor's voice. "Use dust." Serafina lunged for the killing bite. Alina waited. 1 heartbeat. 2. Just as the jaws opened, Alina kicked her back legs out, kicking a massive cloud of sand and dirt straight into Serafina's eyes. The white wolf howled, blinded. She thrashed, snapping wildly at nothing. Alina didn't waste the second. She jumped. She landed on Serafina's back, digging her claws in, and bit down hard on the sensitive spot behind the ear. Serafina bucked like a bronco. She slammed herself against the wall to dislodge Alina. Alina fell off, transforming back into her human form as she hit the ground, gasping for air. Her shoulder was screaming in agony. Serafina shifted back too. She was naked, bleeding from her ear, and her eyes were red with dust. She looked deranged. "Enough!" the elder shouted. The round goes to the challenger for survival. Alina lay in the dirt, staring at the sky. She had done it. She had survived. But then, the wind shifted. Serafina walked past her, being helped by medics. The smell hit Alina again. It wasn't sweat. It wasn't blood. It was that smell from the library, burning plastic, chemicals. And underneath it, something that smelled like fake mate pheromones. Alina's eyes widened. She tried to sit up. She's cheating, Alina whispered, but her voice was too weak. No one heard her. Serafina looked back. She smiled. You got lucky, Runt, Serafina hissed. But the next test is the cage. And Alastor? He won't know you from a rabbit. Alina watched her walk away. Dread settled in her stomach, heavier than the blows. The fight wasn't over. It was rigged. And Alastor was the weapon Serafina planned to use to kill her.
The holding room was quiet, but inside Alastor's head a storm was brewing. He paced the small stone chamber. 3 steps left. Turn. 3 steps right. Turn. His wolf was agitated, scratching at the back of his skull, whining about mate and danger. Alastor rubbed his temples. He needed to be calm. The final trial, the trust test, required him to be in a feral state, induced by a controlled herbal mist. It was dangerous, but he had done it before. He just had to hold on to his sanity long enough for Alina to speak. "Water, Your Majesty," a servant said, keeping his head low. He placed a silver pitcher on the table and retreated quickly, as if afraid to catch the king's anxiety like a flu. Alastor stopped pacing. His throat felt like sandpaper. Driven by thirst, he poured a glass. He downed it in one gulp. The water was cool, refreshing. A heartbeat later, the aftertaste hit him. It wasn't crisp. It was metallic, copper and rot. Alastor frowned. He looked at the empty glass. Poison. The realization came too late. Fire bloomed beneath his skin. It wasn't the slow burn of whiskey. It was an explosion of lava. It tore through his veins, searing every nerve ending. "No," he gasped, gripping the table until his knuckles turned white. He tried to shift, to purge the toxin, but his body rebelled. His vision blurred. The stone walls began to breathe. The shadows in the corner stretched, transforming into monsters with glowing eyes. Control, maintain control. He tried to anchor himself to a thought. Alina. He thought of her red flannel shirt, her laugh, the smell of rain. The image distorted. Alina's face melted away, replaced by blood and fire. "Guards!" Alastor roared, stumbling back. The door opened. 2 of his trusted sentries rushed in. "Your Majesty?" one asked. To Alastor, the guard didn't look like a friend. He looked like an assassin. A demon with a blade. The rational part of Alastor's brain, the king, was shoved into a dark box. The lock clicked shut. The monster took the wheel. "Traitor!" Alastor snarled. His voice wasn't human anymore. It was a guttural sound of pure violence. He lunged. He flipped the heavy oak table with one hand, sending it crashing into the wall. The pitcher shattered. "Get back!" the guard yelled, terror in his voice. "He's turning. It's too early." Alastor didn't hear words. He heard threats. The rage consumed him, hot and blinding. He wanted to tear. He wanted to break. The change took him violently. Bones snapped. Muscles expanded. He was gone. Alastor was gone. Only the beast remained. And the beast was thirsty for blood.
The locker room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Alina sat on the bench, hissing as she wrapped tape around her bruised ribs. Every breath was a sharp reminder of Serafina's claws. But she was alive. She had won the combat round. "One more," she whispered to herself. "Just talk to him. Calm him down. Go home." She could do this. Alastor loved her. Even in a feral state, he would know her scent. The door creaked open. Alina grabbed her shirt, pulling it over her head quickly. She expected a medic. Instead, she saw Serafina. The blonde woman looked pristine, not a hair out of place. Her bruises from the fight were already healed. Highborn healing speed was unfair. She held a small purple vial in her hand. "You look terrible," Serafina said, leaning against the doorframe. "I look like a winner," Alina shot back, standing up. She ignored the pain in her side. "What do you want? Come to beg for mercy before I take your title?" Serafina laughed. It was a soft, cruel sound. "You think you won?" Serafina shook her head. "Oh, you sweet, stupid thing. You didn't win. You just survived long enough to die publicly." She uncorked the vial. The scent hit Alina like a physical blow. Her nose wrinkled. It was overpowering. It smelled like lavender and honey, but wrong. It was too sweet, too perfect. It smelled like burning plastic underneath. "What is that?" Alina asked. "This?" Serafina dabbed a drop behind her ear. "This is mate, or at least a synthetic compound that mimics the hormonal signature of a fated mate. It costs a fortune on the black market." Alina's blood ran cold. "You're going to trick him," Alina realized. "You're going to wear that scent so he chooses you." "Not just that," Serafina smirked. "I also spiked his water with blood rage about 10 minutes ago." Alina stepped forward, her hands curling into fists. "You poisoned him. He could die. The blood rage burns out their hearts." "He won't die," Serafina shrugged. "He'll just be confused. He will see enemies everywhere. He will want to kill everything in that cage." She stepped closer to Alina. The fake scent was nauseating. "Everything," Serafina whispered, "except the one thing that smells like his mate, which is me." "You're sick," Alina spat. "I am practical," Serafina corrected. "When the cage opens, he will rip you apart before you can even say hello. And then I will step in. I will calm him. I will be the hero." Before Alina could move, the arena horns blasted. Poom! 2 guards entered the room. They looked grim. "It is time," one said. Alina looked at Serafina. "He will know. He loves me." "Love is a chemical reaction," Serafina said, turning to walk out toward the victor's podium. "And I just changed the formula." Alina was shoved toward the tunnel. The darkness swallowed her. Blind to the light, she only felt the dread curling in her stomach. She was walking into a cage with a monster who had been programmed to kill her.
Red. Everything was red. The world was a blur of noise and heat. The ground beneath his paws vibrated. He was trapped. The bars were cold iron. He hated them. He wanted to chew through them. Kill. 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 The drumbeat in his blood was deafening. There was no Alastor. There was no king. There was only the hunger to destroy the threat. The gate groaned open. Light flooded in. It hurt his eyes. He roared. The sound tore from his throat, shaking the very foundations of the arena. The crowd screamed, but they sounded like buzzing flies. 2 figures entered the cage. One stood on the left. One stood on the right. The beast swung his massive head. He sniffed the air. The figure on the left. It smelled like home. It smelled like lavender, honey, safety. The scent wrapped around his brain, promising peace, promising sleep. Mate. The beast whimpered. He wanted to go to the safety. Then he turned to the figure on the right. It was small. It was shaking. He sniffed. It smelled like fear. It smelled like threat. It smelled like prey. The drug in his veins surged. Enemy. Intruder. Kill it. In that moment, the beast made his choice. He ignored the safety. He had to eliminate the threat first. He lowered his body, muscles coiling like steel springs. A low growl rumbled in his chest, vibrating through the floor. The prey didn't run. It just stood there, staring at him. Why doesn't it run? It didn't matter. Logic vanished. He launched himself across the cage. He was a missile of fur and fury. He hit the small figure hard. They crashed into the dirt. He pinned the prey down. His massive paws pressed into its chest. He could feel the frantic thump, thump, thump of its heart. He opened his jaws. His teeth, sharp as razors, hovered inches from the prey's throat. Saliva dripped onto its face. This was the end. One bite, one snap. The crowd went silent. The beast prepared to tear the life out of the enemy. Just as the jaws descended, underneath the smell of fear, he caught a whiff of something else, something faint, something like rain. He paused, but the red haze surged again. Kill, he snarled, the sound deafening in the enclosed space, and prepared to strike. All was lost. The king was dead, and the runt was next.
Death smelled like rotten meat and copper. Alina lay frozen in the dirt, the massive weight of the Alpha King pinning her to the ground. His claws dug into her shoulders, sharp enough to draw blood. Hot saliva dripped from his jaws onto her cheek. It was disgusting. It was terrifying. He's going to do it, her mind whispered. He's going to rip my throat out. Time seemed to slow down. She could hear the individual grains of sand shifting under her boots. She could see the red veins in his golden eyes, dilating with madness. Then she smelled it. The wind shifted, carrying a scent from the edge of the cage. It was lavender and honey. It was thick, cloying, and sweet. Seraphina. Worse yet, the scent didn't smell like a person. It smelled like a chemical fire. It smelled like a lie. Alina looked up at Alastor. His nose was twitching. He was confused. He was torn between the prey beneath him and the safety standing over there. He doesn't know, she realized. He's drugged. If she fought him, she would die. If she ran, she would die. She had one option left. She stopped fighting. She forced her muscles to relax. She uncurled her fists. She bared her neck, not in submission, but in invitation. The crowd gasped. They thought she was giving up. Instead, she was fighting dirty. She was fighting for his mind. Alastor, she whispered. Her voice was barely a breath, but in the silence of the arena, it carried. The giant wolf froze. His ears flicked. I'm only here, Alina said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. Because of a stupid dare. She looked straight into his feral, crazy eyes. So don't get ideas.
The world was a kaleidoscope of pain and noise. Kill, tear, feast. The commands hammered against the inside of his skull. The thing beneath him was soft. It was prey. It needed to die so the noise would stop. A sound sliced through the red haze. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a beg. It was a voice. Her voice. Stupid dare. The words echoed in the empty cavern of his mind. They bounced off the walls of his rage. Dare? Between one breath and the next, an image flashed. A dark bar. A red flannel shirt. A sandwich with strawberry jam. The beast growled, shaking his head. No. Trick. He looked up. Across the cage, the safety scent was calling him. It promised sleep. It promised the pain would end if he just went to it. Go to the safety, the drug whispered. He lifted his paw off the prey. He turned toward the safety. Even so, something held him back. The prey beneath him. It didn't smell like fear anymore. It smelled like rain. It smelled like sage. It smelled like the closet where he hid his favorite shirts. He was torn. His body vibrated with the conflict. The safety figure, Seraphina, took a step closer to the bars. She uncorked the vial again. The chemical smell hit him like a wave. Come here, she seemed to say. It was too strong. It was too perfect. The very perfection of it felt wrong. Real life wasn't perfect. Real life was messy. Real life was a girl in a flannel shirt yelling at him to eat broccoli. The red haze flickered. Alastor blinked. The monster was still in control, but the man was waking up. He looked down at the small creature under him. She wasn't fighting. She was waiting. Why?
He was hesitating. Alina saw the confusion in his eyes. The gold was fighting the red. He was right on the edge of the cliff. One push could send him back into the madness, or pull him back to her. She had to be that push. Defying every survival instinct, she reached up. The crowd screamed, "Don't touch him!" She ignored them. She ignored Serafina, who was looking furious by the gate. Alina placed her hands on either side of his massive, furry face. His fur was coarse. His skin was burning hot. "Look at me," she commanded softly. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a vibration that went straight through her ribs. Grrr. "I know you're in there," she whispered. "I know you're scared, but I'm not." The connection was instant. His head lowered. His wet nose touched her forehead. "You're a giant oaf," she told him, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "And you still owe me a drink." She leaned up. She kissed his nose. It was a crazy thing to do. You don't kiss a feral killing machine. The world held its breath. Alastor stiffened. His claws retracted. The red light in his eyes flickered out. It was replaced by pure molten gold. Recognition. He blinked once, twice. Then he let out a sound. It wasn't a roar. It was a whine. A broken, apologetic whine. He collapsed on top of her, not to kill her, but to hide. He buried his face in her neck, sniffing frantically, inhaling the scent of rain and sage as if it were oxygen. "Safe," his body language said. "She is safe." Alina wrapped her arms around his massive neck. She buried her face in his fur. "I got you," she sobbed into his coat. "I got you, Grumpy." Over his shoulder, Alina looked at the gate. Serafina stood there. The vial had slipped from her hand. It shattered on the floor. Alina narrowed her eyes. The trial was over. But the war? The war had just begun. And this time, the king was awake.
The fog in his mind lifted, burning away like mist under the morning sun. Alastor blinked. The red haze was gone. In its place was a crystal-clear, razor-sharp rage. He was naked, covered in dust, lying in the middle of a gladiator pit with his mate wrapped around him like a shield. He smelled her tears. He smelled her blood, just a scratch but enough to make his beast roar for vengeance. A jarring note broke through the scent of rain and sage. It wafted from the edge of the cage. Acrid, chemical, fake. It was the smell of the safety he had almost chosen. With a low, rumbling growl, Alastor stood up. He kept Alina tucked against his side, shielding her from the world. His body began to shift, bones cracking and reshaping until he stood in his human form. A guard rushed forward, throwing a cloak over his shoulders. Alastor didn't say a word. He just walked toward the gate. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. They were terrified. They had seen the monster and they had seen the girl tame it. Serafina stood there. Her face was pale. The shattered purple vial lay at her feet, a damning puddle of oil. "Alastor," she stammered, taking a step back. I saved you. The drug, she poisoned you." "Stop," Alastor commanded. The word wasn't a shout. It was a gavel strike. He stepped over the broken glass. He leaned down, dipping a finger into the purple liquid. He brought it to his nose. "Synthetic," he said, his voice echoing in the silent arena. "Illegal and desperate." "It was her," Rowena shrieked from the royal box, pointing her cane at Alina. "The runt did it." Alastor looked up at his mother. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel the weight of her disappointment. He only felt pity. "Mother," Alastor said, his voice cold as the grave. "If I check the treasury logs right now, what will I find? Did the money disappear? Or did you send it to Serafina's father to pay off your gambling debts?" Rowena's mouth snapped shut. Her face went gray. The silence that followed was deafening. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. "The debt is canceled," Alastor announced, turning to face the shocked crowd. "Or I open an investigation into the High Council's finances. Today." Serafina looked at her father in the stands. The old duke looked at the king's furious eyes. He looked at the exposing evidence on the floor. He nodded once. A surrender. Get out, Alastor told Serafina. If I see you in my city again, I won't be in a cage. Serafina didn't wait. She ran. She didn't walk. She fled, her heels clicking frantically against the stone, the sound of her defeat echoing for everyone to hear. Alastor turned back to Alina. She was shivering, holding the oversized flannel shirt closed. He scooped her up into his arms. Let's go home, he whispered into her hair. I believe I owe you a drink.
The walk back to the SUV was a blur of flashing cameras and hushed whispers. Alina buried her face in Alastor's chest. She was exhausted. Her adrenaline had crashed, leaving her shaking and weepy. She felt bruised everywhere. You're okay, Alastor kept murmuring, his arms tight around her. I've got you. They reached the car. Silas, the driver, held the door open. He didn't look at her with the usual indifference. He looked at her with reverence. He bowed his head. My queen, Silas said. Alina froze. I'm not a queen, she mumbled, climbing into the back seat. I'm just tired. You are what you prove to be, Alastor said, sliding in beside her. The car moved, gliding away from the arena. The dark city streets rolled by. You came back, Alina whispered, looking at him. In the cage. You came back to me. I heard you, Alastor said. He reached out, taking her hand. His thumb traced her knuckles. You called me an oaf. Alina let out a wet laugh. Well, you were being dramatic. I was ready to kill the world, he admitted, his voice dropping low. The drug, it took everything. Except you. You were the only thing that felt real. He pulled her closer. She rested her head on his shoulder. The smell of him, real him, not the blood and dust, wrapped around her. Pine and smoke. So, she asked, closing her eyes, does this mean I don't have to eat the raw meat anymore? We can negotiate, he smirked, but the vegetables stay. Deal, she sighed. The rhythm of the drive changed as the car slowed down. They were at the Citadel gates. Alina looked out the window. The courtyard was full, not with guards, but with wolves. Common wolves, omegas, deltas, the kitchen staff, the cleaners. They were standing there, waiting. As the car stopped, they didn't cheer. They bowed. All of them. They weren't bowing to the Alpha King, they were bowing to the runt who had walked into the fire and dragged their king out alive. Alina felt tears prick her eyes again. They're waiting for you, Alastor whispered, kissing her temple. I don't have a crown, she panicked. You don't need one, he said. You have the heart. That's harder to find.
3 weeks later, the throne room looked different. The dark, heavy curtains had been pulled open. Sunlight streamed in, lighting up the obsidian floor. The terrifying silence that usually filled the room was gone, replaced by the sound of scratching pens and the occasional argument. Alastor sat on his throne. He was working, but he wasn't alone. Alina sat on his lap. She was wearing a silk gown, royal blue, fitting for a queen, but over it, she wore his favorite red flannel shirt. It was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up. A fashion nightmare. He loved it. Sign this, she said, shoving a paper under his nose. What is it? Alastor asked, resting his chin on her shoulder. The new budget, she explained, tapping the paper with a pen. We're cutting the statue maintenance fund and putting it into the Omega housing project. You have enough statues. You don't need more ego. My ego is fragile, he teased, signing the paper anyway. Your ego survived a cage fight, she countered. It'll survive a budget cut. She leaned back against him. Her weight was grounding. It was the anchor he had been searching for his entire life. The doors opened. A new ambassador walked in. He stopped, staring at the sight of the Alpha King doing paperwork with a woman sitting on him. The ambassador looked confused. Your Majesty, am I interrupting? No, Alastor said, tightening his arm around Alina's waist. But make it quick. My mate gets grumpy when she's hungry. Alina slapped his arm lightly. I do not. You tried to bite a general last week, Alastor reminded her. He tried to take my fries, she defended. Alastor laughed. It was a deep rumble of a sound that filled the room. The shadows were gone. The monster was at peace. So, Alastor whispered, ignoring the ambassador for a second. Are you still planning to haunt me if you die? Alina looked up at him. Her brown eyes sparkled with mischief and love. Oh, absolutely, she promised. I'm going to rattle your chains forever. Good, Alastor said, leaning down to kiss her, because I don't plan on letting you go. Ever. As the sun set over the kingdom, Alastor realized something. The dare was over, but the adventure? That was just beginning.